Hi, Algebra 1. These are the problems we didn't work out from page 109, 110, so double check your work. Let me know if you have any questions and I'll happy to help you. So number 2, we have x and y. We have 1, 1, 3, 4. I'm not even going to look at the y value. Because this repeats here and here, this is not a function because the x repeats. The x repeats. Okay, number 4. We have just our x values alone. They're all the same. This is not a function as well because the x values repeat the whole time. Number 6, we have 3, -1, -2, 3, and 3, -2. Because this 3 and this 3 repeat, this is not a function. Okay, there are relations. A relation is a special thing that makes a point. A special type of relation is called a function where the x values then repeat. So this has the x repeat. Then number 8, all we have to do on this one is the vertical line test. Vertical line test crosses, not a function. Again, it's a relation, it's just not a function. Number 10, you have a circle. Vertical line goes right through it, hits it twice. Not a function because it did not pass the vertical line test. Number 12, this is a weird kind of shape. It's called a hyperbola. But if I draw this through, it touches twice. So this is not a function because it did not pass the vertical line test. Did not work. Then we get to number 14. Create a function that is a relation that is. So you can just go 1, 2, 3, 4, and then you go 5, 6, 7, 10. Because those don't repeat, that's a function. Okay, I worked number 16 yesterday, so I'm going to go over 17 and 18. So 17, I have g at x equals 1/2 x minus 5. So this is what we're going to keep referring back to. And then we want to graph it over here. Okay, so if I do g at -4, that's going to be 1/2 times, inside those parentheses is where it used to be x. Now I'm going to plug in -4. So half of 4 is 2, half of -4 is -2, and then that's going to give me -7. So what I'm going to do is I create the point. So this will be my x value. This will be my y value. So -4, -7. It's down here. And then I'm going to say, okay, let's do g at 2. Again, I'm going to take that 2, plug it into where x used to be. Half of 2 is 1. 1 minus 5 is -4. So it gives me the point 2, -4. So 2, -4, that's down here. And then I'm going to plug in g at -2. So I get 1/2. There's a -2 here. Half of -2 is -1. -1 minus 5 is -6. So -2 comma -6. It's -2, -6 down here. Then I'm going to plug g at 4 in. So I get half times 4 minus 5. Half of 4 is 2. 2 minus 5 is -3. So let's make our point. 4 comma -3. So 4, -3 is right down here. I'm going to go ahead and plug 0 in. So I get half times 0 minus 5. So that's 0 minus 5 is -5. So the point 0, -5. 0, -5 is down here. Okay. And then our last problem that we want to take a look at is they have g at x is equal to 3. Okay, so I'm going to replace 3 for this. So I have 3 equals 1/2 x minus 5. Add 5 to both sides, so I get 1/2 x equals 8. Multiply both sides by 2, so I'm going to get x equals 16. So at 16 comma 3, that's our point. So 16 comma 3 is way out off our thing, so we can't even see it. Let's take a look at number 18. Number 18 is going to be done the same way as number 16 was. Just keep plugging those points in. Make sure you ask me. I could help you if you have any questions. I'm going to be on page 111. 111. Okay, so go ahead and find page 111 in your book. So the very first word, this says the blank variable is graphed on the x-axis. This variable influences the other. So you're going to fill in independent. The independent variable is graphed on the x-axis. This variable influences the other. The blank variable is graphed on the x-axis. This variable is what happens as a result of the other. So the dependent variable is graphed, and that should be y-axis. Ooh, boy, we made a mistake there. Okay, the maximum value, and we're just filling this in as we go down, the maximum value of the function is the largest y value and occurs at the highest point on the graph. So the maximum function, just note that this is going to be a y value, and we'll talk about that later. The minimum value of the function is the smallest y value, again, y value, and occurs on the lowest point on the graph. And we'll talk about that when we start looking at a few other questions. A function is increasing if the pencil moves up the line from left to right. In other words, the y values get larger as the x values get larger. Fill in those blanks with larger, increasing and larger. A function is decreasing if a pencil moves down the line from left to right. In other words, the y values get smaller as the x gets larger. A function is constant if the line is horizontal. In other words, the y values do not change as x gets bigger. Okay, a function is, this is about halfway down on page 111. Function is positive if it is above the x-axis. So remember, x-axis is here. So it's positive if it happens up here. Function is 0 if it is on the x-axis. So if we're on the x-axis, that's what this is talking about. And then a function is negative if it's below the x-axis. All right, so let's start figuring this out. A few things I want to do is I want to plot these points. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So this is the point -5, 2. This is the point -3, 0. This is the point 0, 3. That point right there, it's like, I would say 1.5 comma 0. I don't know if we need it or not. And this point is 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 3, -3. And then this point is 5, -2. So I'm just put all the points first. So being that keep my pencil down to draw this whole graph, the domain are the x values. So the furthest left x value is -5. The furthest right is +5. So they're points, so I'm going to have hard brackets. So -5 to +5, this graph exists. Well, if the domain are x values, that means the range are y values. So the y values, I'm going to look for the highest y value and the lowest y value. So this goes from -3 to +3. And they're square brackets because those were actually points. What is the maximum value? The maximum value, look at your highest y value, and that is 3. What is my minimum value? I'm going to look at my smallest y value, which is -3. Okay, so let me just kind of highlight those. So this value came from here. This value came from here, the highest x and y values. Where is our graph increasing? So let's talk about increasing. Increasing means as I go to the right, it goes up. So it's increasing between both of those. So I'm going to use the x values at both of those points. X values at both of those points. So it goes from -3 to 0. So -3 to 0. And then it goes from 3 to 5. And that's where it's increasing. Okay? So that's called interval notation. Where is it decreasing? decreasing. So as I go to the right, it goes down. So it's decreasing at both of those spots. So let's talk about what that's going to look like when we do that. Okay, so decreasing. So it's decreasing from -5 to -3. It's also decreasing from 0 to 3. And where is our function positive? Positive means above the x-axis. Okay, so we have to be careful. So it's above the x-axis here. It's above the x-axis here. All right, so I actually have to list two things. I'm going to use the x values to talk about it. So -5 to -3. Okay, this -3 takes place because it's a dot on the x-axis. That's not above it. And then it goes from -3 all the way to 1.5. Okay, make sure you ask me if you have questions. It's a much different idea to think about, whether it's above or below. We're going to work more of these questions as we progress through this. Okay, so first thing I want to do is list my points. So -3, -3. This point here is -2, -1. This point here is 1, -1. This point down here is 2, -4. And this point, or let's take a look, maybe this point might be important for us too. That is point 3, 0. And this is the point 4, 4. Okay, so that's the first thing you need to do. The domain are the x values. So the furthest left x to the furthest right. So our domain goes from -3 to +4. What is the range? The range are going to be the y values. So I'm going to look for my smallest y to my biggest y. So -4 to +4. What is the maximum value? Well, this is my maximum value, which is 4. What is my minimum value? It's my smallest value. This is my minimum value, -4. Where are we increasing? Okay, so increasing is going to be here and here. So we use the x values of those points to talk about it. So it's increasing from -3 to -2. It's also increasing from 2 to 4. Again, you're using the x values to describe what's taking place. Where is the graph decreasing? It's decreasing just right here. So again, I'm going to look at the x values to say where it's decreasing. So it's decreasing from 1 to 2. Again, you use the x values to describe what's taking place. Where is it constant? This is the constant region. So from -2 to 1, it's constant between those. Where is our function positive? So this means it's above the x-axis. And there's only one spot right here. That's above the x-axis. So that is, use the x again. So from 3 to, what is that high point? 3 to 4. Again, I'm using the x values to describe that, the x values only. Where is the function negative? Negative is below the x-axis. And it's negative. All of this is all negative. Okay, so it goes from -3 all the way to 3. And you use the x values to say where it was below the x-axis. On what interval was the function 0? 3, 0. 3, 0. Where, on what was the function 0? What interval? Yeah, that's where it's crossing the x-axis. So at 3, 0 is where it crosses the x-axis. 10. Do I have more on this page? Nope. All right, so just make sure my numbering on here was off a little bit, but you should be able to catch on. All right, so this one says, as Jason completes a warm-up, workout, and cool down, his heart rate is monitored and shown on the graph below. Analyze the graph to answer the following questions. The independent is time. It's the x-axis. And then the dependent is beats per minute, which is the y-axis, okay? Again, what is our domain? So this is starting at 0, and then it goes all the way to 60. So my domain goes from 0 to 60. Okay? This means the time of exercise. So he exercised for 60 minutes. What is the range? Well, it looks like that should be 80, 60. Okay, so it looks like it's starting there at 70. So 70 is my lowest. That's my lowest. And then my highest is up there, which is at 160. Okay, so, and we can go square brackets on both of those. And it should have been square brackets up there as well. I'm sorry. So this means, what does this mean in the context? Well, basically, his resting heart rate was 70, and he got up to 160 beats per minute. So beats per minute of his heart beating. What is the maximum value? Again, that's the maximum value up there, so it's 160. So that's his max heart rate. What is the minimum value? The minimum value was 70, and that's the minimum, and that's the resting heart rate, like he's sitting in class. He didn't start exercising yet, but his heart was still beating because that was a good thing. On what intervals is the increasing? Okay, so increasing. So it's increasing here, here, and here. So it looks like from using the x values 0 to 15, it's increasing. And then from 20 to 30, it's increasing. And then from 35 to 50, it's also increasing. It's going up. Is there any more of this? Okay, so now this is going to be page 113 to 114. All of them, that'll be your homework. Okay? Have a nice day. Make sure you ask me for any help you might need, okay? Bye-bye.